My friends, look at Italy now. What's happening in Rome is not an isolated event. It's a sign of an occupation underway that the system tries to ignore. China is suffocating local European industries with surgical precision. Millions of workers are facing a sector-wide collapse. The Italian economy is being drained by Beijing right now, and what we have today is Beijing's Trojan horse. Keep this in mind, they don't come in with soldiers, they come in with containers and contracts. And when you open the door, your sovereignty has already been eaten from the inside. Now look at this data. Imports from China to Italy jumped 91% between 2019 and 2025. Meanwhile, the average growth of imports in the other surveyed European Union countries was 54%. Italy now buys more from China than France, which has a significantly larger economy. On the other hand, European exports to China increased by only 1% in the same period. If we look only at Italy, there has been a 27% drop in exports to China since 2023. Beijing floods the Italian market with low-cost products through underpricing, aggressive state subsidies. Machines, automobiles, and industrial goods arrive at Italian ports with prices that don't even cover the cost of European raw materials. The Chinese government finances surplus production to export deflation and destroy foreign economies. They are not seeking immediate profit. They're trying to clear the industrial landscape. Do you see the danger? The Asian country is putting pressure on European manufacturers, especially Germans and Italians, who are finding it extremely difficult to compete in a sector that employs millions of people. Chinese imports in Italy jumped 91%. In practice, this means that for every Italian factory trying to survive, there are 2 Chinese copies flooding the market with prices that are impossible to beat. The local producer is forced to close down because Xi Jinping's subsidy system makes competition unfair by design. The result? The result is mass unemployment and the death of the productive middle class in Rome and Milan. Italy is the testing ground for this economic invasion. What starts in Europe quickly crosses the Atlantic and reaches Brazil. Beijing doesn't just want to sell products. It wants to replace the industrial base of the West with total dependence on its supply chains. If Italy, with its manufacturing tradition, is falling, the alarm bells for the rest of the world are deafening. It looks like a perfect free market collapse, right? But there's a flaw that Beijing can't hide. The European Union tried to react by imposing tariffs on Chinese electric cars, claiming government subsidies made the competition unfair. However, the tax applied only to the specific electric product. Beijing's response was immediate. They simply shifted their focus to hybrid vehicles which are not subject to the tax. And the result was a 155% increase in sales of Chinese hybrids across the entire European continent. The Chinese bureaucracy is faster than Western legislation. They identified the loophole in European tariffs within a matter of weeks. While Brussels was discussing paperwork, Chinese automakers were already redirecting their logistics to flood the market with the hybrid model. They used the opponent's own legal framework as a workaround tool. It's a war of movement against the West's slow and static bureaucracy. The Chinese government subsidizes assembly line retooling to ensure that the export flow never stops. In practice, European protection became worthless on paper even before it was implemented. The Chinese take over the market while Western politicians celebrate symbolic victories. The European automotive industry lost the race because the competitor doesn't follow the rules of the game. He rewrites the playbook. As they advance into foreign territory, if you tax the electric car, they deliver the hybrid and keep control of the lot. And this circumvention tactic is Beijing's standard in every sector. If you close the trade door, they open 3 windows through technical loopholes. In Brazil, we see the same phenomenon with the construction of car factories that bring ready-made components from China just to be assembled locally, avoiding import taxes. They don't back down. They just change the form of silent invasion to keep the host dependent. Do you believe that Europe has any real chance of competing with the Chinese giant? Fear prevents any real response from Brussels. China holds the global monopoly on rare metals and refined critical minerals. And these materials are essential for the entire high-tech industry. From electric car batteries to missile guidance systems, aerospace, and advanced magnets, Europe depends almost entirely on the supply controlled by Beijing to keep its industrial supply chains running. The Italian press claims that the reason why the European tax is limited is the fear of retaliation over these materials. Beijing controls not only the extraction, pay attention, but mainly the refining of these minerals. They use this control as an invisible diplomatic leash. Any attempt at serious commercial retaliation by the European Union is met with veiled threats of supply cuts. The European leadership is paralyzed because they know that without these metals, their high-tech factories will stop working in less than 30 days. It's an institutionalized monopoly that turns the European industry into an economic hostage. China controls the monopoly on refined rare metals. And in practice, the European industry is a hostage to this, at the direct mercy of Xi Jinping's decisions. If the supply is interrupted, high-tech production in Germany and Italy freezes immediately. European sovereignty ends exactly where the need for lithium and rare earths begins. They don't react to commercial aggression because they fear absolute industrial darkness. If the maestro turns off the tap, Europe stops. The whole world is tied to this same chain of dependency. The United States is trying to create alternatives. But the process of mining and refining takes decades to establish. Meanwhile, China dictates the rules of the global game with the iron hand of those who control the base of the technological pyramid. Whoever controls the essential raw materials controls the political destiny of developed nations. And Brazil, my friends, rich in resources? Is it watching this movement without realizing that its own wealth is being mapped? Chinese control goes far beyond the sale of raw minerals. They have created an institutionalized system for collecting industrial secrets. The Beijing government requires any buyer of rare metals for the defense or aerospace sectors to disclose detailed technical specifications. It is necessary to provide the buyer's identity, the intended use of the goods, and the specifications of radars, missiles, or advanced magnets in which the materials will be used. Can you believe the West fell for that line? Well, in addition, the buyer must commit not to resell the items without prior approval from Beijing. Xi Jinping tightens these requirements every year. Can you imagine the United States having to get China's authorization to sell military technology to an ally? Does this bureaucratic system work as an institutionalized and legalized espionage network? Xi Jinping receives the secrets indirectly, industrial secrets from their global competitors through export forms. They know exactly what Europe and the United States are building even before the prototypes are ready. China maps out the West's sensitive technology using the adversary's own commercial needs as bait. The goal is to copy and then eliminate those metals from the next category of products. Does China require technical specifications to release rare metals? In practice, Western companies hand over their industrial secrets in exchange for raw materials. Beijing uses this data to copy technology and then exclude rivals from the market with cheaper versions. Has this already happened with Tesla's electric batteries? It's legalized espionage through mandatory supply contracts. You buy the material today, but you hand over your technological survival tomorrow. The supplier knows more about your project than your own government does. This is the Chinese win-win method. They get your money and they get your engineering project. Then they produce the same item for half the price and destroy your company. The West is funding its own obsolescence. And what happens to the Italian lawn mowing robots that disappear from the market is what will happen to defense systems if the pattern isn't broken. The Chinese surveillance system is fueled by the Western need for cheap components. The occupation strategy has already crossed the ocean and reached the heart of Latin America. Brazil is being devoured from within right now, at this very moment. China controls 90% of the container terminal in Paranaguá, the second largest port in Brazil. They buy land and plants in Mato Grosso and control the logistics of soybean transportation. In Bahia, BID is building a mega factory where most of the workforce, engineers, and technicians are Chinese. Using the excuse of a lack of qualified local workers, 75% of the soybeans that leave Paranaguá go directly to China. They use the debt trap strategy, financing strategic infrastructure that the country can't afford with its own resources. And when the debt comes due, the physical asset comes under Beijing's control. They bring the capital, the project, the construction, and the workers. The host country only provides the territory and natural resources, losing sovereignty over its own vital infrastructure. They buy the farm, the processing plant, the logistics, the port, and the ships. In practice, the entire Brazilian soybean sector already belongs to the Chinese Communist Party. Brazil plants and harvests, but the profit, transportation, and final destination are decided in Beijing. Are we losing sovereignty within our own territory? And soon you'll have to buy soybeans produced in Brazil from a Chinese state-owned company. Brazil is becoming a major export hub without national control. What happened in several African countries is now being repeated here in our territory. There, the occupation caused outrage when local jobs were replaced by Chinese workers. Here, Brazilians still haven't realized the level of control that has already been handed over. China acts as an economic parasite that infests the host until there is no national autonomy left. While the government celebrates partnerships, the country loses control over its own shipping. They solve their own domestic employment problem by economically occupying our borders. And the worst part, when you control the port and the country's economy, you don't need an army to dictate terms at the palace. And for decades, the United States fell into the same trap that today suffocates Europe. In search of immediate profit, giants like Apple and Tesla handed over their production lines to the Chinese Communist Party. What started as a business partnership turned into a dangerous dependency. When Washington finally woke up, it realized that even the rare metals needed for American missiles and the Pentagon's defense industry were under the direct control of Beijing. The Dragon not only manufactured the products, it now had its hand on the neck of America's national defense. And the shift in the landscape came with a shock of geopolitical testosterone. The return of Donald Trump to the presidency represented a complete break from previous passivity. Trump understood that Xi Jinping's win-win was a one-way street and decided to confront the Chinese regime where it hurts the most, in supply and energy. And quickly, the United States sought new suppliers of critical minerals in countries like Japan, Asian nations, and strategically in Brazil, which holds the second largest reserve in the world. At the same time, Trump took control of the Strait of Hormuz, the bottleneck through which 50% of the oil that fuels Xi Jinping's factories passes. It's an energy checkmate, and what we're seeing is the end of the power vacuum. China has an explosive internal debt, surpassing 300% of its GDP, which makes the Dragon even hungrier and more aggressive in taking foreign assets. Russia, now bankrupt and isolated, is nothing more than a Chinese satellite. But unlike Europe, which remains paralyzed by fear, the United States has decided to cut off Beijing's oxygen. The power realignment now forces China to choose between internal collapse or strategic withdrawal. The global balance has broken out of inertia and turned into a war of attrition where military courage once again dictates the rules. The effect of this new American stance in Latin America is immediate. Venezuela and Cuba have lost their relevance and are now just economic burdens. But Brazil has become the main stage for a historic turnaround. On one side, China tries to maintain its grip through the control it has already gained over our ports. And on the other hand, the Trump administration sees Brazil not as a backyard but as a strategic partner capable of breaking Beijing's mineral monopoly. With the second largest reserve of rare metals in the world, Brazil is the missing piece for the United States to suffocate Xi Jinping's hegemony. The question for Brazilians has now changed. Are we going to continue being the host of this parasite? Or are we going to take advantage of this power clash to reclaim our sovereignty and become the new engine of the West? The wall has been raised, my friends. It's time to choose a side. But I want to know your technical take on this. No filter. Do you believe that Brazil still has time to react and reclaim its sovereignty? Or has the Trojan horse already gone too far and we're boxed in? If you believe in a reaction, comment sovereignty below. If you think the net has already closed in, comment Troya. I want to see which feeling is prevailing in our community. And if you want to understand what the mainstream media is hiding, come to our Bunker de Inteligencia. We already have more than 3,000 subscribers on a censorship-free platform where we decode geopolitics in real time. The QR code is on the screen and the link is in the description and also in the pinned comment. I'll be waiting for you there. And for those who are tired of Hollywood's whining, check out our channel for series and movies with expert curation. Everything is pre-selected, no woke culture, no whining, so you can enjoy it with your family. The link is in the card that will appear for you now in the pinned comment and also in the description. My friends, now it's time to shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video. It takes a lot of work to make. See you then.